Of course, I'm your host, Shawn Soole. Today, I'm looking forward to. I had April on the show 4.5 years ago in May 2021, which doesn't seem that long ago. But when I look back at the episode and I look that I don't have a beard, I think I was still clean shaven in 2021. The look is very, very different. And so I'm really looking forward to catching up because April is the CEO and founder of Cheeky Cocktails, and it's kind of cool because outside looking in, I've been seeing some really cool stuff that she's been doing as well as Cheeky has been doing this year. Some really good progressions. I was saying in the green room that I'm jealous that she's had an opportunity to like jump in and have like marketing calls with like Gary V and stuff like that, which is like a dream come true for me. And she crossed over with like Tim Ferriss. And I'm just like, oh, come on, man. But again, this is always outside looking in. So I'm really curious to see the entrepreneurial journey, because as we all know, as entrepreneurs, most of the time you get one great post on social media and the other 5 things that you're doing kind of suck. And so you have this horrible dichotomy of like how awesome it is, but also the ups and downs of entrepreneurship. And she is someone that I look up to when it comes to entrepreneurship in a big way, because she just grinds so hard. So good morning. Welcome, April.
Hello. Thank you so much for having me back.
I can't believe I had to look it up because I was like, I took a 2-year break, but I was like wondering when was the last time I had you on. And I was like, 2021, man, like all the things that I've done since 2021, it's just so long. It's half a decade. Let's just be honest. It's a half a decade ago. Like you can do a lot of a decade.
No, I remember too. I was sitting in our warehouse. I mean, I'm still in our warehouse, but I was sitting like in front of a stack of boxes, and I just was like shoved in there. And again, we're still kind of shoved in there amongst the boxes, but yeah, it is really wild how much like our lives have changed, and I'm so looking forward to catching up.
So for everybody, I'll link up the old episode as well, just so you can sort of see the progression from then to now. What's your origin story in the way of how did how did you start in the industry, and how did Cheeky Cocktails sort of come about?
Yeah. So I grew up in food, beverage, hospitality. I feel like I was pretty fortunate because I grew up in Vermont, and it's a beautiful place, but also, you know, there was a shortage of help in restaurants. And so I ended up getting a job at this like amazing little country inn called the Four Columns Inn when I was 13 years old. And that's where I started really learning about food. And chef had cooked at the James Beard House, and really sort of, that was my first sort of moment of falling in love with hospitality. So stayed in hospitality, mostly in like fine dining and, you know, sort of elevated dining. Got into the cocktail world in Boston where I went for school. So I think I started in that space maybe 2004-ish. And then stayed in Boston for 11 years, moved to New York in 2011, got deeper into the craft cocktail world, started working as a brand ambassador for Bacardi, consulted for Diageo, and I taught over 12,000 students how to make cocktails. So that was kind of like origin story. And then the first version of Cheeky came along in 2015-ish. So I was interested. What's that?
Wow.
Oh, yeah.
2015, like 10 years.
It's been a long road, but that's when, you know, I first started getting interested in entrepreneurship and trying to figure out like, well, what do I launch? Do I launch a service? Do I launch a product? And then, you know, lo and behold, fast forward a bunch of years, you know, Cheeky is now almost 6 years old, and we're alive, which is, it sounds really crazy, but it's a huge thing, I think, to be appreciative of, because these times are wild.
So from the early days of Cheeky, starting as like really good cocktail mixes, I find it's interesting that probably when you started, it was still something like you had to like knock down doors and sort of push that element. And then the pandemic sort of happened, and when everybody started making cocktails at home, was the pandemic a good thing for Cheeky in the way of like customer adaptation and like consumer adaptation? All of a sudden, everybody's talks about the Negroni, like Stanley Tucci and the Negroni during the pandemic. Everybody started drinking Negronis and Aperol spritzers and Zabaliatos and everything else. Was that a good sort of like segue into getting Cheeky into a lot more hands at that time, or was the pandemic as bad for you as it was for everybody else?
No, so it could not have been better timing. So just to back up a little bit, so Cheeky, they're super premium cocktail ingredients. At this point, all of our products are syrups or juices. And so, for example, for the syrups, I'm sure you have a ton of bartenders listening. We have everything from like a 1-to-1 simple syrup to a honey ginger syrup to a really delicious award-winning espresso syrup for espresso martinis that's made of single origin Nicaraguan beans, locally roasted in Brooklyn. So those are our products, and we launched into March of 2020, it was like 2 weeks after everything shut down in New York because of the pandemic. And so something that I did not account for at the time, or I didn't realize was so critical, is we had all of this inbound. So for like a year and a half, it was every single day. We had corporate orders of anywhere from 10 to like 1,000 kits per order.
Wow.
Yeah. And that was zero marketing. So we were just like, oh, shit, like we have a business model that works. Lo and behold, that was actually the pandemic. So like our really rough time did not start for about a year and a half when buying patterns started going back to normal. And there's a whole lot of other detail that's relevant to that that I'm always happy to get into, just about like the cash conversion cycle and who's paying you and how much they're paying you and when they're paying you and how that affects the sort of growth of the business. But ultimately it was a really sort of perfect start for us. And I also would never wish the pandemic on anyone, obviously. So just was our circumstance.
So when you started off the brand, what were the sort of hurdles you had to sort of get over? Because I know that I think we talked about it in 2021, and I've seen it on Instagram as well, about pasteurization and shelf life and people who would open a bottle and then put it in the fridge for 2 weeks. And what were those sort of like that sort of intersection between craft and CPG in a way that you knew what you could do in the bar and in a restaurant setting, and then how do you make that applicable to a general consumer?
So there's like 400 different directions I could go with that. So if I go in the wrong direction, then just let me know.
It's your podcast. You go in whatever direction.
Okay. So, right. So there are a lot of principles, I think, that stay the same from when you make a product behind a bar and then when you scale it to a shelf-stable product. We were fortunate in that, from 2015-ish, or I guess maybe even 2014, I was trying to, or I did launch and was trying to build a different cocktail mixer company. So I had like a 4.5-year learning period where we did high pressure processed mixers, not shelf stable mixers. So it's the same process that is used for like green juices that are refrigerated for up to 6 months, and essentially it does not get them to shelf stability, but it allows you to extend the shelf life, but it has to be refrigerated. So I had a long period of time where I started learning about the food safety elements before we ended up completely pivoting and saying, okay, can't do refrigerated anymore. I don't think it's scalable in this space. Now I'm going to move to shelf stable. So there was that, but I would say that, if I were to kind of go back and talk to myself at any point over the past 10 years, that's only one part of the equation. I actually think, 85% of new beverage brands fail in year one, 90% by year two. And I think there's a bunch of reasons for that. But one is because the realities of scaling this type of business, it's so capital intensive. And I truly think to really have a chance at building like a real beverage brand, I really think you need $1 million. And that's not, I didn't just invent that number. This is just like going through our process and seeing where we've had to raise money and where we've had to take on debt and, where I've had to not pay myself for years. I think that is above and beyond the hardest thing about this is the sort of capital strategy.
So when it comes to capital strategy, how do you go about raising that sort of capital as you're building? Because you do everything in house. You do everything in house, don't you?
Correct. Well, at this point, yes. We do work with co-manufacturers as well, but right now we're manufacturing everything in house.
Yeah, which a lot of times when these brands sort of put, like as you said, the $1 million backing and the $1 million capital, they'll just go to a co-packer and just go, hey, here are my recipes, make it shelf stable, away you go. But you've done the steps and the hurdles to get to that stage. When it comes to raising capital for like anyone out there who's looking at doing a CPG brand or something similar, what's your piece of advice for like raising capital and building the business from the back end up?
This is actually one of my favorite topics because I find it like interesting and it's different for everyone. So there's a few things, and mind you, at this point, I actually consult on the side with smaller, like aspiring beverage entrepreneurs. So if anyone's interested, let me know as well. Because I mean, essentially, these are tough questions that ChatGPT can be very helpful, but like hearing it from somebody who's been through like the ringer is, I think, more helpful. But to answer your question, so one of the main questions that I ask initially is, how much money do you have to invest in this yourself? How much money do you have access to, like friends and family? How long do you have before you need to start paying yourself? And when do you need this thing to start actually making money? And I have a whole spreadsheet of these things. But based on those questions, and honestly, based on like 3 of those questions alone, I can tell you if I think it's like just a fool's errand to start this in the first place, or if you're in a decent position to be able to start it. Because, so for example, I consulted with somebody the other day who was like, oh, I'm so excited. Like I have access to some money, whatever. But they wanted to make, and they felt like this was a really low bar. They wanted to make like 45 grand in their first year. And then I think it was like 120 in their second year. I did not pay myself. I put in hundreds of thousands of dollars just because I was consulting full time. I took every spare dime I had to put it into the first version of this business. So I probably put in like $400,000 of money that I did not have before I started the business. And I did not pay myself at all for like 5 years. And then even now, I don't pay myself much. And so if you're somebody who's like, I need to make money from the business in year 1 or even year 3, I think you should go services, not product. It's just, again, when you have no overhead, where it's literally your effort and your expertise, that's like a beautiful situation. And then when you have this type of business, you have to invest in facility and insurance, or like you have to meet huge co-manufacturer minimum order quantities. Then you got to invest in inventory, and typically like you don't have a route to market that's like dialed in from day one. Again, there's exceptions to this, but most brands fail because they invest so much in the first run, but they don't have a way to sell it. And so then they just run out of money by the end of their first production run, or like before selling out of their first production run. So it's a complicated thing. Again, I love this conversation. And I think that I heard a phrase, or I heard a saying the other day saying, like it's somebody very experienced in beverage was like, if people want to start beverage brands, I try to encourage them not to. And here's the thing is like, if you have a chance of convincing them that they shouldn't, they should have no business starting in the first place. Like if they're going to listen to you, if there's even a chance they're going to listen to you, they shouldn't do in the first place, because it's a brutal industry.
That's great.
Well done.
Because I'm interested in that side of the business, in the way that, do you find that a lot of capital investors are similar? Because in the restaurant side of the business, in hospitality, you get a lot of people who want the glory of owning a restaurant and having that little like tip of the hat when they walk in sort of deal. Do you find that in the CPG space that they have the same sort of capital investors that do it, or is there much more of a aligned every other business sort of mentality when it comes to capital investment, like CPG lines over, say, restaurants and bars?
Yeah. I mean, listen, there's people who invest for a whole host of different reasons. If you are sub $1 million in annual revenue, your best bet is friends and family. Or if you've got a big following on social, I mean, I would consider that to be friends. So friends following, social following. That's like absolutely the case. Like so there's, angel investors, there are venture capital investors, there are private equity. There's like a bunch of different sort of like asset classes. Angel investors are going to be investing their own money. And so that is like the lowest hanging fruit if you are like unproven. That being said, like professional angels who are not your friends and family, the feedback that, we had gotten along the lines forever was like really less than $1 million in annual revenue. Most professional angels who don't know you personally are not interested. But for example, we did a collab with Kendall and Kris Jenner for Tequila 818 in 2022. And I think consequently, so many investors saw that and were like, oh my God, like like this could be something big. And nobody said it to me explicitly, but I feel pretty confident that that was pretty influential with some of our angel investors who are now in on Cheeky.
Oh, nice. So when it comes to your sales routes, how much is direct to consumer, like online sales? How much is like in-store sales, and how do you balance that all out personally to like figure out which is the most optimal for your brand?
This is like such a tough question. I can tell you how much, like what the percentages are, but I think right now for us, there is some prioritization that needs to happen that has not been happening. So to answer your initial question, about 25% of our sales are direct to consumer currently. A single national account or a single regional account for us completely changes the balance of everything. And then if you actually think about how we need to access those accounts, for example, actually Julie Reiner very graciously put us into her holiday pop-up last year and this year with the Omni Hotel. So we're in like 29 locations on the menu. Those guys are all ordering from us directly, so we retain our wholesale margin. But if, for example, we had to go through a distributor, all of a sudden we lose, a significant portion of the margin. So for us, we are successful. Like we're very successful in food service. We are very successful in a couple of types of brick and mortar retail accounts, specifically, liquor and grocery. And then direct to consumer, it's like, that's where we have our highest margin, and that's where we have like the closest relationship with the end consumer. But it's also like the most expensive to access, in that, like, if it's going to take me, whatever, I don't know, 20 posts, organic social posts, or, a lot of troubleshooting with paid media to get some creative that converts, that could convert 0 customers, or it could convert a customer for like $30, or it could convert, 100,000. And at this point, we have not dialed it in well enough to like have that formula, or have those, rather the systems, I would say, on our end to like constantly churn out that content. And it's something that we're working on. But all to say is stuff is working in all of the channels, but there hasn't been one where it's like, it's so easy to get the customers that it's like drop everything else and lean into it. So I'm working on that actually right now.
I've been watching your stories, and that you've got an intern now doing your social media and stuff like that. But I post a lot, and social media to me, I listen, as I said earlier, I listen to a lot of Gary Vee and stuff. Like social media now, I find is way harder than it was even 5 years ago, just with the algorithms and everything. You post something and you're like, oh, that's a great post, and it falls flat.
Yeah.
You post it, you're like, I'm just gonna put it out. I need to put a post out or something. I need to put something out, and you put it out, and it like blows up, and you're just like, I do not understand the algorithm anymore at all.
Totally. I mean, I think, it's we've mentioned obviously Gary Vee a couple times. I listen to his stuff regularly, and I'm like, don't be the person who doesn't do anything. Like, you want to be the person who's like constantly putting stuff out. But that being said, one of the hangups that I have is I'm like, the stuff that's easiest for us is the sort of like BTS kind of like, we're in the office, this is what's happening. Like we're, like things are crazy. That's easy for us. The stuff that's harder for us is actually the stuff that I know perform or historically has performed the absolute best, which is I had a couple of videos go like sort of mini viral where like each of them has like 175 to 200,000 views like across platforms. And it just takes more thought and effort on my side. And I'm like, okay, that being said, all I need to do is carve out like 4 hours one day and we can bang out like 20 things. So I don't know. I think it's like what you said is 100% right, is it's so competitive, and it really is more about, I think, like infrastructure and systems than like in discipline than anything else on our end. And I feel like it constantly evades me, but also we just need to do a little more than we did yesterday, and eventually we will get to where we need to be,
How does your product stand up with hospitality accounts like actual restaurants and bars? You're mentioning Julie's Omni pop-up. Because we both know people who would be like, I'm never buying, why would I buy syrup? Why would I buy juice? Why I can make it myself. But as I get back into speaking and stuff, there are so many people out there in establishments that would never freshly squeeze juice, but they just want a good product. And they want to put out cocktails, but they're a little like neighborhood joint who the bar manager only works 4 days a week sort of deal. So
Yep.
how does your hospitality account sort of play into your whole business model?
So on one hand, from like a strategic angle, as one can imagine, like the higher profile, higher volume, the higher visibility, the better, right? That's like every spirits brand is like, I want to be top shelf. I want to be on the back bar. I want to be in the well. I want on the menu. Like everyone wants the same thing. Fine. So that is true. That being said, I think it's like the people who need us oftentimes find us because they're looking for it.
Yeah.
So we have, we're in the Standard Hotel, it's a 5-star hotel, the Omni, as I mentioned, Bellagio and Aria in Las Vegas, like they're using it in events. So I would say the sort of sweet spot for us is when there's an emphasis on quality, but there's a challenge with the labor element. So whether it's there's like an inconsistent bar team, whether it's that, for example, as we know, hotels can go from like they've got everything covered and then they have a massive event. And then there's no way to expand your staff, 20 times to accommodate for like these large banquets or whatever. So I think the sweet spot for us is that where it's like they want an elevated product. They want something that's like made of real ingredients. They need something that's consistent. And we're filling like an actual problem. So we've got those guys like the super high profile, high end accounts. And then there's a lot of, I would say more neighborhoody type places that purchase from us and are buying every week or every other week. And that's clearly that they're using us in place of any other option for citrus or for simple or for honey or for whatever. So that's what we're finding. And I would say just in one final note about this, one of my favorite things, since we sell so much direct, like wholesale direct, we're in like 1,300 accounts. About 700 of those are we service them directly, which is like a lot of work, but it's great because we see all the orders. So we've had purchases from opera houses, seminaries. We just got an order from somebody who runs an illegal mini Disneyland. Oh my God. I love these like quirky, like it's like so cool to see. Oh yeah, it's just so cool to be like, oh my God, these people are clearly looking for a solution because they found us and we're shitty at marketing. So
So with your entrepreneurial journey, what do you find has been one of the hardest things to get through? And then what was one win that you were like not even expecting? Like what was one of the things that you're like, what, I gotta hit this, I gotta get through this because this is what I have to do. And then what was one win that just came out of the blue and you were just like, oh damn, okay, cool.
Yeah. So the hardest thing is absolutely cash. So it's not normal for businesses like mine to be profitable. Like 3 years is very early. It could be, Hendrix was hemorrhaging money for 15 years or something before
wow.
what I'm saying? So it's with products like this, and specifically in the beverage space, it is like fighting gravity to get to profitability. And it's just a much longer time horizon than you would ever have expected. And mind you, like, I think between my CFO and myself, I think we're pretty good at like forecasting, and like I'm very on top of like cash flow management and really frugal and all these things. But there have been infinite times where we have like nearly completely run out of money. And at this point, I feel very comfortable saying I'm like some sort of expert on finding sources of capital that you had zero idea could even be a viable option for you. So that's the hardest thing. But we've gotten through every, major hurdle, and that gives me a lot of confidence that like we're just going to get better at that. So that's exciting. In terms of wins, and this is like a similar thing, and I hope I'm not like the most intense person you've ever had on your podcast, because I'm like survival, but this shit's real, and I'd rather talk about real stuff than not real stuff. There have been, in all the times that we've nearly run out of cash, or like had like cash coming in, but it's going to come in like 45 days later, and then you're just like, I'm going to be in the negative for like a month. So of all those times, maybe 3 times I was like, I don't know how we're going to get through this. And things just happened that fixed the problem. So it was like the timing of like a really big order, or like, having a purchase order in hand and being able to finance that purchase order, where otherwise we would have needed to scramble for 30 days or something to find cash to pay my staff. It truly, and I'm totally serious when I say this, it gave me a level of like faith and belief in some organization in the world that I never had before. Like, I don't come from a religious background. And so even though I think my job is to prepare for the most catastrophic outcome and then hope it doesn't happen, we have been saved by external forces multiple times. And I feel very grateful for that.
When you do your consulting, do you find that lack of knowledge of, because cash flow is the biggest thing in any hospitality business, I think any business, but definitely hospitality, because you have these ebbs and flows, and especially when you get into the work that you do, where it's like sometimes 30 days net, which some people don't even understand. Like, oh,
you're way longer, by the way.
Yeah, you're gonna. I'm gonna send out all this product, and I get paid in 30 days.
Yeah.
When they come to you about doing a CPG project, I've had a few people come to me about doing like packaged seltzers and stuff like that, and I'm like, guys, like, you're 5 years too late. Like, what are you talking about? You want to launch a boutique vodka soda for the BC market, which we have, the whole market's saturated. Do you find that it's tough to make them figure out how much money they're going to need to run, how much they can sell? Because you've got to have a ceiling on how much you can sell your product for. Like, you can't sell your bottles of syrups and your bottles of juice on the shelf for $15 a pop. It's not going to move. But if that's covering the cost of all the operations you have, because as you were saying, Hendrix, outside looking in, no one, unless you really dive into it, you're not going to know that Hendrix was a negative for 15 years. Because backing. So how do you explain that to someone who's super excited, super passionate, who's like, I've got a great idea for a CPG. This is what I want to do. How do you sort of like bring that down and distill it down into like a more manageable idea?
So I would say, first and foremost, nobody I've consulted with so far has gotten that far. And what I mean by that, hopefully it's not a reflection of me. What I mean by that is the folks that have found me and have hired me as a consultant, either on this side of things or on the co-manufacturing side, because at this point we are a co-manufacturer also, and we help small brands scale from, producing by themselves or having an idea and trying to like bring their product to market. The sweet spot that we sit in is kind of like, we're happy to do runs like 1 through 3, or, just like your early runs before you're ready for a larger co-man. And again, many of these people are going to be small for a long time. So like maybe it's many more runs, but we're kind of like pilot facilities. So in all of that consulting stuff, most of the people who've sort of landed with me are really early stage. And so I found that the conversation is more like, people are excited about something. They have zero idea of any of the things that they don't know, obviously, just how it works. And many times people are like a little bit looking for like emotional support of like, can you validate this idea? And then I have people who are like, can you help me invalidate this idea? And that's the really smart, thoughtful route. So I actually put, and this is, by the way, this is not like a whole sales pitch for my services. This is literally just the discovery that I came through. I actually put together it's like a 5-week CPG. It's not like a boot camp, but it's like one-on-one sections to determine if the product is viable or not, including going through like setting all of your pricing from MSRP all the way down, getting a real sense of your costs, getting a real sense of like how much capital it's going to take to launch and build this type of product, understanding you and your motivations as a founder, et cetera. So that's a very long way of saying, I think that naivete is like an essential element of like becoming an entrepreneur. Like, if you knew the shit that you don't know,
you have to deal with,
but
Who would do it?
It's so true. So I would say that if we have a casual conversation, let's just say you want to start a CPG brand. If we have a casual conversation, I will be fully straight up of like, if I think it's a good idea or not. The capital requirements, again, what I think is true. Like, I think you're going to need to invest, 5 years into this, potentially not paying yourself or paying yourself barely any money. You're probably not going to sell the thing for 10, 15, maybe 20 years. And the vast majority of businesses like this, they're not like shelling out distributions. Like, you're not getting money at the end of the year because there's so much extra, right? It's like, make your money when you sell the thing. So it's a very long route. It's going to take a lot of money. And if that's something that you're not in a rush, like truly you're not in a rush, and you are obsessed with the customer and their problem, and it's about the process of becoming a different person and like learning about yourself and like becoming a stronger person who's capable of doing anything, then I think you have a real chance, because tenacity and resilience is absolutely, those are the most important things like in this whole journey.
So
I hope I answered the question. I feel like I just.
That's beautiful. You were talking about motivation because as an entrepreneur, we've talked over the years, and like as an entrepreneur, even myself, like there's days I'm like, what the fuck am I doing? Like, why am I still doing this? And I think the hospitality industry is so much tougher at times because we are such passion-driven people. And I'm not saying that other entrepreneurs in other industries aren't passionate, but our root comes from people pleasing, and like our DNA is like different.
You want to make people happy.
Yeah, you want to make people happy.
Yeah. Happy.
And as an entrepreneur, it's a lot of out, and not a lot of coming back to you. So what keeps you motivated as an entrepreneur? Like we've talked about, like your ups and downs in the business and stuff. What keeps you motivated every day to get up and keep pushing that envelope?
I love this question. There's a few things. One is, again, for me, so I like publicly state that I'm trying to build $1 billion business. I honestly do not give a fuck about the money. Like I want to have more money than less money, but like I don't give a fuck. It's about the process of getting something out there that really works and that like solves problems for people and that people love. So it's the same motivation I think about the hospitality. Also, I love competition, and it's really not about other people. It's really about like excellence. And I'm pleased with the things that we've been able to accomplish, but we are like 1 billion years from where I want to be, or like where I think, oh, we have this dialed in. And so like the desire to be great, as like cliche as that might sound, is like a huge motivator for me. And then the final thing is just like, I'm like, I've invested so much fucking time in this thing. Like, there's no chance that I'm going to let this thing wither on the vine. Like this has to work. I will not allow it to die, and by the way, that sounds really dire, but like that is what happens if you do not push it forward with all of your force. Like brands want to put themselves out of business, whether by growing too slowly or growing too fast, excuse me. That's like the natural state of things. So yeah, I think that those like, I mean, I'm like so intent on making this thing like work in a real way. And just as too, like with your businesses, like the satisfaction of seeing something that was like so hard 3 months ago get easier. And like, I mean, even my little team right now, that's like, we're like making a massive order right now. And it went from like old established people and then some new people kind of not knowing what they're doing to like within 3 days, people are working together like seamlessly. Like that is so satisfying.
How do you feel like your leadership? Because again, like sometimes we get our blinkers on as entrepreneurs, and then you start building a team, and all of a sudden you're like, okay, well, I've got to not have my blinkers on so much for my own personal stuff, because as I said, you wake up and you're like, why the fuck am I doing this? How do you build your team and expand on that?
I think thing one is hiring for attitude. And when I say attitude, I don't just mean like happy-go-lucky attitude. But I mean, like, so I would not have a life if it weren't for like my main production person, Anna. I churned through like 20 people at the facility before she showed up. And she is so detail oriented. She arrives at the facility before I do, and she every morning she's like, "Good morning, blessings. How are you? Smiley face, like praise hands." You know, she's just like a ray of sunshine. And the combination of those two things have like changed my life. And I tell her that all the time, and I say that to our new employees, some version of that. You know, she knows everything. Like, if you've got any questions, like, she's the main person. So I think that there's that, and then nurturing that, which again is like making, like, leaving her with no doubt that she's like an invaluable part of this equation. And I would say the sort of like final piece of that, which again, it starts with her, but the final piece of that is like being really, really transparent about like my weaknesses. So like when I started like making it very clear, like I'm bad at this, or like looking dumb in front of everybody, like even so I speak to most of my Spanish in like exclusively Spanish, and my Spanish is not great. And like the fact that we all laugh about, like I was asking one of the guys the other day if he needed a step ladder to get up to something on a shelf, and I accidentally said elevator instead, and he was like utterly confused. And like I think the fact that they can all laugh at me and also know that if I need something done, it needs to get done. I think that combination has worked really well for us. And again, being very clear too, like if there's a problem with something, I used to just kind of like bottle it up and be like, no pun intended, and be like, they'll eventually realize, or like, I don't want to make too big of a deal. But these days it's like, if there's something that's not being done properly, like I call it out and I'm like, hey, can you do this way? And it's not about reprimanding anyone now. It's just saying for the next time, this is how we need to do it. And also making it just like fully fine. If somebody F's something up, just being like, okay, like this isn't great, but like, let's fix it for next time. And then we're okay, you know? So people don't hide it either. I don't know. Is that what you found?
That's perfect. I think as entrepreneurs, like I'm from an ex-military family. So for me, it's been always tough to be transparent because my father was the least transparent person. But as I've got older and matured and evolved and matured a lot, like being transparent with your team has been way more beneficial than bottling stuff up. And I still bottle stuff up, and I still come in with a resting bitch face, and that's the thing. But I've got a lot better, and I think, especially for mental health, like if like can't go back to 20 years ago when all of a sudden the restaurant owner gets put to rehab or something. You're just like, what the fuck was happening? Well, I didn't see anything. And you're like, well, you kind of did see the signs.
Yeah.
You know, he sat at the bar till 2:00 in the morning every night drinking.
Yeah.
Like you saw the signs.
Totally.
So I did find a quote, and I tried to find out where it was. It was on your Instagram, but it kind of epitomizes cheeky a lot. It says, cute on the shelves and ruthless in the bill.
Oh yeah. That was from an interview. That was, yeah.
And I saw that and I was like, that is the epitome of one, you, and two, your brand.
Aww. And
I wrote it down because I found it because I was like looking up some pictures and a little research. And I was like, oh, that is a gangster quote.
I feel like, thank you. I feel like that is the biggest compliment. Also funny, like from an interpersonal level, like I said earlier, I'm probably like you. I'm like so intense in my head, and like during the day, it's just we're running like nonstop. Yeah. We're just plowing through stuff, and so I'm always like worried in social situations that I'm going to come in and be like, it's a massive rival, you know, and then people would be like, what the fuck just happened, you know? But it really is like, I don't know. I think this is also one of the beautiful things about talking to people like yourself, where we have a shared experience, because you get it. Is it's like to like move any business or creative venture forward, it like getting from the point of inertia to like momentum of any kind, it takes so much effort, and it can be so exciting. And also it is interesting because, again, it is a sort of like dichotomy that may not be evident, and hopefully isn't evident necessarily when you see the product on shelf.
Yeah, it's always one of those things. Is like people go, "Oh, it's already there," and like just because I make it look easy does not mean that any way, shape, or form was this easy to do. Just because I told you that I'd get this work done for you, like as a consultant, I'm like, and I get it done in 24 hours, just because my ADHD brain just like locks in and I just bang out like menu design and some brand refresh, and I'm like, there you go, and they're like, oh, I'm like, just because I make it look easy doesn't mean it was easy. My wife always looks like I pitch her an idea that I've got in my head, and she's like, oh, so, and then a week later she's like, oh, so how'd that idea go? I'm like, I think that was last week. That idea is done. Like I've already processed it. It's already gone out to the right people. I'm just waiting to hear back from them.
Yeah.
And she's like, oh, okay. Like you just told me the idea last week. I'm like, yeah, but the idea has already been fleshed out of my brain.
Totally.
Put it out here. It's already been done all in here before it even comes out of here.
Totally. And that, again, that's like, you recognize those attributes in like 1 second when you see in somebody else. And that's, I think, just to kind of build on what we were just saying about staff, like I think that I have felt exponentially more successful listening to my gut about people, because there's a million people who like check boxes on paper, and you're like, oh, they meet the criteria for like being a great employee or being a great partner or whatever. And then their actions suggest different things. And so like being able to have this type of conversation with you, and many conversations with other entrepreneurs as well, you're like, oh, they get it. Like we are like cut from the same cloth, and that's like such a fun part of this journey too, is like seeing other people building shit and being like, I see you, and I see you're doing great work, So
this is a great segue, because I mentioned at the very start of the episode, like, how did you run into Tim Ferriss? Like, how did that happen?
Okay. Well, like, that was the weirdest week. And mind you, again, just for any audience who doesn't actually know me, I think like anybody, I share a lot of my wins, and I also try, hopefully in a non-bitching and moaning way, to show a lot of the hard stuff as well. And again, I hope I don't sound like, like a wet blanket, but like I think it's important to show the duality of this, because it's like mostly not great things, and then there's like these like sparks of positive things. So that week was very weird. I think it was within 7 or 10 days, 4 things happened. I was on my first call with Gary Vee. Again, it's with like 2,000 other people, but it was very cool. I ran into Tim Ferriss, which we'll get into in a second, in person. I met the founders of Poppy virtually in my beverage accelerator. And then I also was filmed for a reality TV show with like 30 million person audience. Now, mind you, again, this is like also in the heart of like the worst year of my fucking life. So just putting that out there. Okay. So Tim Ferriss, I rock climb at a gym in Brooklyn, and he was randomly there. And he was like, his book, The 4-Hour Workweek, changed my life and my entrepreneurial journey when I was, I don't know, I was probably like 24 or something. Because he wrote it 20 years ago, or I don't know. I was in my 20s. So anyway, so I see him across the gym from me, and I'm like, that guy looks a ton like Tim Ferriss. And I'm like squinting, and I used to have 20/20 vision, and I'm like staring at him, and nobody is doing anything. There's like 100 people in the gym, and nobody is looking weird. And I'm like, if it's him, somebody would do something. Long story short is, I'm like, I'm 99% sure that's him. Then I get really nervous, and then I go to the front desk, and I'm like, if there was somebody really famous in this gym, and you might not be able to tell me if they're here or not, but if there were, and they looked like they were really like busy and like didn't want to be distracted, would you go bother them? And they're like, the only person we know who's famous who's here right now is Tim Ferriss. And I was like, it is him. And they're like, go talk to him. And I was like, I'm so nervous. So anyway, I did go talk to him. I think I was the only person who talked to him. And I just was like, hey, are you Tim? And he was like, I am. And then I was like, you just wanted to let you know, like, changed my life, blah, blah, blah. He was so nice. So, so chill. We had like a 3-minute conversation, and then I let him be. But yeah, it was cool. It was very cool.
And what was the reality show for the reality show filming?
So it's called Meet the Drapers. And this is one of those other things about, I think serendipity in the role of the entrepreneurial journey is like, I'm very strategic, and I don't always pay attention to like, oh, this could be this serendipitous fun thing that could lead to something else. I ended up getting second place at a pitch competition. It was like the first formal pitch competition I participated in. And somehow there was some relationship between that pitch competition and the like the casting director for Meet the Drapers. So I got the opportunity to pitch virtually with a whole ton of other people to participate in their New York filming. And I bombed it. It was like we had, I think, 2 minutes, and I had just changed my pitch, and I did an 8-minute version. I didn't have a 2-minute version, and it was just a hot mess. And I was like, this is terrible, and I'm embarrassed. Fast forward is I'm like, but I also know how TV works, and I know how like if there's like somebody drops out or if there's an emergency, like they might need backup. So I'm like, I'm just gonna keep my days open anyway. And the first filming was supposed to be on a Sunday. So this is like 4 days or 5 days prior. And on Saturday night, I'm out at a party, and they're like, I get a phone call, and they're like, hey, are you free to film tomorrow? And I was like, of course I am, and then we filmed Sunday, we filmed Monday. I was one of 6 companies from New York and New Jersey that pitched at all. And it went as well as it could have. That's all I'm allowed to say before it actually airs next year. But I was pleased with the presentation.
Yeah, as you were saying, like 2025 being a rough year, and all the good little high points in that week. I agree with you. It's always one of those things, like everybody wants to celebrate you when you're doing well, and you'll get the magazine articles and you'll get the interviews and that sort of thing. As soon as you do poorly, it's like ghosts, it's crickets. Like no one's reaching out to you going, hey, the same people who interviewed you for a magazine article about how great it was don't reach out to you, go, hey, are you okay? Or do you want to chat about it? Like it is like opening and closing restaurants in my career. It's like one of those things, like everybody wants to know you when you open a place. If something closes or you leave a space, it's like no one wants to talk to you. You can see it like side eyes at coffee shops going, I don't really want to broach any subjects with Shawn right now because I know it could turn out badly.
Well, I think that is sometimes true. So and again, I don't know this for sure, but this is my feeling on this. The more that I've talked about like the hard stuff and just been like really honest about this stuff. I mean, I don't share like all the deepest, darkest, whatever all the time, but like I've publicly mentioned, there have been multiple times in this journey where I've lost like a third of my hair from stress. And I think the more that you share that in good times, bad times, whatever, the more the type of person who resonates with that comes into your world. And mind you, like back to the staffing thing for a second, and I'm nodding because they're all producing over there behind this wall. I've cried in front of a couple of my staff like several times, and they and I'm getting emotional thinking about it right now. Like they just come and like give me hugs, and are like also feel responsible for like my mental health, which is, I don't know. It attracts the right people to you, I think. And I think that when you're more, is it the word reticent? When you hide that more, then you only get the people who want to celebrate the wins. Because they're like, oh, what, like, that's what this person does. All they fucking do is win. And I actually said this to somebody the other day, is I'm like, I am not used to being I'm very strong. I'm not used to being in the position of ever having to tell people I'm not doing well and ask them for help. And I had to do that a lot in the last 18 months. And it was very uncomfortable to start off with. And then it got easier and easier. And I think that that people see your humanity and realize that you're not being a shitty partner, like you're having a hard time, and everybody I've asked for help has helped me. Everybody.
So I don't want to keep you much longer because I could literally talk to you forever. What's the plan for 2026? What are the big things on the horizon that you're looking forward to?
The biggest one is we are launching a new product line that I think is going to crush. I could be wrong, but I don't think I'm wrong. And the reason I don't think I'm wrong is because I know that it solves a huge problem for me personally. So it's the first of the product. It's essentially, it's like a low sugar prebiotic line. So it's canned carbonated. The first product is going to be a tonic. And the reason I think that this is going to do incredibly well, firstly, I found zero evidence of any other brand like this until this week when I saw that there was like a strange little brand in Canada that's doing this. There's no scenario in which I think they're competition. I think we're just barking at very different trees. But I was like, oh, wow, somebody else had this idea and actually brought it to market. That's interesting. But I know it solves a real problem for me as somebody who, like, I love tonic, but I don't drink it because it's too sweet. Like the sugar content's crazy. I also want to I want to put good things into my body, and there's no tonic on the market that does that in addition to being low sugar. And I'm also trying to moderate my relationship with alcohol. So I want something that feels like a nightcap or feels like a sort of bitter treat, regardless if it's mixed with spirits or not. So we're launching that in Q1 of next year. I'm going to do a Kickstarter for it, which I think is going to be super fun. I did one many years ago, and people just love being part of the process. So it's like so much fun. So that's a big one. And then, we've had we've had various profitable months, but we should, in Q1 of next year, we should reach some version of profitability, and that changes everything, because then I don't have to be raising money, and I don't have to be, it just frees up my time and bandwidth in a way that I am really just thrilled about. But that being said, and this is my one final entrepreneur thing to say, is I'm also prepared for everything to go poorly. And if it does, that's okay, because this is a long journey. And the thing that I learned this year is we were supposed to have all this expansion. We were supposed to launch in 400 new stores in Q2, and everything was pushed forward because of the tariffs. And the emotional strain of feeling like it was our breakthrough year, and then it not happening, that took me 6 months to get my head out of my ass about. And so I am prepared for things to not go well next year. And that's okay, because now I'm prepared for it. Now I'm emotionally steeling myself for it and hoping for the best and planning for the best as well.
Okay. It's the end of the podcast. I always do 5 deep podcast questions for every guest. Have you got time?
Yeah, let's do it.
What is one lesson or experience that has shaped your perspective the most, and how do you carry that forward in your life? Personal or business?
Say the question one more time.
What is one lesson or experience that has shaped your perspective the most, and how do you carry that forward in your life?
When I was 26, I went on a couple of dates with somebody, and I wasn't that interested, but he was nice and he checked boxes, and I didn't know how to say I wasn't interested. And he was a lot more mature than I was. And he sat me down and he was like, April, people vote with their feet. If you were really interested, we wouldn't be in this sort of ambiguous friend zone. And that clearly resonated with me. And I think that is true for relationships. I think that's true for business stuff. If you're inventing all these reasons to not do something, or if there's endless things that occur before you take your first step in business, or before you go on a date with somebody, that's really important feedback to attend to. And so if I say I'm gung-ho about something, and then it just takes me a long time, I'm I wasn't that invested. I gotta commit to it or not do it at all.
If you could leave one lasting message or piece of wisdom for the world, what would it be and why?
I think people are a really critical part of success. And there's so many people who are excited to help you if you'll just let them in. And I think I say this because, for probably the first 7 years of my journey, I was I need to focus. I need to just put my head down and work and work and work and work. And I would just say no to infinite, just friend conversations or anything that felt like it was a distraction from the hard work. And when I started saying yes to those things, it was night and day, where it was things just happened 10 times faster. people would do all these intros just because they see somebody they think is going to do cool shit and they want to help, and I try to, to pay that forward as well at this point. But that was it took me so long to learn that one.
Looking back on your journey, you wish you understood earlier in life?
These are really hard questions, John. I might go back to the people one, that like there's transactional behavior, and then there's like long-term relationship building behavior. And if somebody's exhibiting, traits that you're not down with, by all means, discontinue the relationship. Don't respond to them. But I definitely think I engaged in some pretty transactional behavior just because I was like, I just didn't know any better. This is years and years ago, where I was like, I'm only going to do this if you do this for me. And that was overtly wrong. Again, there were a couple people who, like, the energy they came to me with was very transactional, where they were like, I want to get all of my whatever marketing clients on your podcast, and I won't do anything to promote the episode. Like, there were some people who did that sort of stuff where like I reciprocated with that energy, but there were also some people where I just was like, my time is so valuable, and like I'm not gonna entertain this relationship because they're unclear about what they want. And I should have just been like, of course, let's just have a chat, see where it goes,
Of it changed over time.
I definitely think this depends on the person. For me, I put together essentially like a vision board for like the elements that I want in my life. So that's I want to contribute to the good in the world. I want to like have a healthy routine between athletics and eating well. I want to have like strong relationships, and I want to be able to support my friends and family. So those are my versions of success. And then I also want to layer over that like, if you're not there, it doesn't mean that you're a failure. So like right now, I'm only part of the way towards these goals. And sometimes like my health fluctuates, like sometimes I eat really well, sometimes I don't. But I think that just having like a good idea of what's important to you, and then making sure that you're directionally moving in that direction, I think to me, that feels right and that feels good. And also being able to grow regularly. And for me, that's every day. That's important.
What do you hope your legacy will be, and what steps are you taking to build it?
If I can inspire other people to follow like their sort of authentic path, and like bet on themselves in a smart way, not in a reckless way, that would make me happy. And very specifically, I started in restaurants making $3 an hour. I don't come from wealth. We were never like on the streets or anything, but, financial strain was a reality in my background. And I think being able to show other people that you can start from kind of anything, and you can build something of value and something that's really meaningful for you. That would make me really happy if other people felt like they could do it too, because they saw what I did.
And just one last question, but to lead off to a light note at the end of the podcast: favorite classic cocktail to drink?
Favorite classic. I'm going to say, again, depends on your definition of classic, but I'm going to say Negroni and Dirty Martini. Again, I don't know if you would consider a Dirty Martini to be a classic, but those are two favorites. And then third is going to be a daiquiri. I can't just choose one.
Like I said, I could talk to you for.
We have to do it the other way too. You have to come on my podcast.
You're incredible. So I wanted to say thank you so much for your time, and I know you're busy, so just thank you so much.
Thank you. No, it was so great catching up. And again, I want to turn the tables and bring you on my podcast as well, and ask you all the questions. Mine might not be as deep, but yes, would love it.
Well, I'll chat to you soon. Thank you so much.